I've been involved with Greenwood Cemetery now for just about 8 years. I saw a newscast, a gentleman was complaining about the conditions of the cemetery. So I came out that following Saturday to see if I could be a part of the reclamation of the cemetery. When I got here, I found a forest. You couldn't see a single tombstone on the property. You couldn't walk through it. You couldn't see through it. It was so dense. Honeysuckle, winter creeper, all sorts of evasives. So it was almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years in July. And I was cleaning out the family home and I ran across a Bible. And in the Bible, there was a stack of funeral burial cards. And I started looking through those cards and come to find out I had grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts and uncles, all sorts of family members buried in the cemetery, which I had no idea. So it went from something I probably should get involved with to something I've got to get finished now. So I committed that day to restoring the cemetery. Here I am 8 years later. Cemetery is almost 32 acres, and I probably have cleared 25, 26 of those acres.
Looks a lot different now, huh?
Oh, a lot different now, and very proud of what we've been able to accomplish here.
Yeah.
And especially for the families.
I think with Greenwood, it shows the cemetery itself. If we're not vigilant, our stories can be forgotten. And it's important not only for Greenwood Cemetery in isolation, but really for the larger African American community, and I would argue for the entire American community. This is part of the American story, right? This is our collective history.
Our last burial was in 1993, and we have over 50,000 people that are buried here. We're telling the stories of those interred. When we first got involved 6, 7 years ago, you couldn't see a headstone from the road. So it's really been a wonderful journey for Raphael and myself. We both retired from our jobs to commit full-time to this, and we haven't regretted any of it.
Some days I do. We couldn't do it without the help that we get. You people coming today really bolsters our efforts, and you'll kind of get an idea of what all of this looked like once you get up here.
The Outdoor Youth Corps is our youth employment program. So we work throughout the St. Louis region on projects like this. Invasive species removal. In general, ecological restoration is something that we really like to do.
We out here cutting up some honeysuckle and trying to clear out these invasive species for the cemetery. This is like an old cemetery. Like, you'll be surprised by how many tombstones you'll see under these trees due to the honeysuckle, because the honeysuckle and the invasive species are covering over the graves. It's crazy.
I'd like to tell everybody, African American, this was about the only place, non-sectarian cemetery, where an African American could have been buried. So I guarantee you, if their family's been here for any length of time, they've got people in the cemetery.
Greenwood Cemetery opened in 1874, but Greenwood provided a place almost like a dream, a place where African Americans could be buried with dignity. We have about 5,000 names, 5,000 interments of people who were born during slavery, people who could have easily been just rolled off into a ditch when they died. But here you've got a place where your situation is going to be dignified. It wasn't until years and years and years later that the cemetery was in bad shape and people were not responding to the needs of it.
And I think the role of the Black community is being a green space that people used to come out and enjoy, a place where they'd come out to recognize family, and for people to be able to connect with stories their parents told them. That's really important. My area actually is urban wildlife conservation, and places like this are really important, because a lot of the work that takes place in cities, it's not just the really wild place, but there are also places that are the green spaces. And these places are really important because it's habitat for birds, for different species, and they've seen deer walking through here, just things like that. So they're really important as green spaces, and it's really a unique opportunity to kind of connect history of places and the cultural value of places like this with nature.
What Raphael and Shelley have accomplished here at Greenwood is phenomenal. Honeysuckle, what had really infested the entire 30+ acres of cemetery, and it's a real battle. It takes a lot of sweat, blood, and tears to clear honeysuckle, and they've come a long way in opening the cemetery up for people to enjoy, for people to come and remember those in their family that are buried here.
Well, every time we uncover one, you get like in this frenzied feeling. You get excited. You can't wait to see who they are. I start looking up her history, anything I can get my hands on to see if there's something about her that I can learn. So many families have not been able to come back to honor their loved ones because the cemetery was so overgrown from being abandoned. And so now that Greenwood Cemetery Preservation, now that they're here, they've been trying to do what they can.
There is an important aspect of life where you are visiting graveyards, celebrating ancestors, acknowledging them, honoring them, especially in the African American community, and the inability to get to, grandma's or great grandma's grave site probably caused a lot of heartache. When you go to a gravesite, it's a great opportunity to tell younger people in your family of who these people were, what they endured, in order for you to be here on this earth at this moment in time.
My uncle passed away when he was about 3 years old. He was jumping in the bed and he fell and he hit his head on a trunk. At that time, the hospitals were segregated. So the first hospital they went to, he wasn't able to be seen. So then they took him to the African American hospital at the time. By then, he had passed. So we wanted to come out and make sure that my uncle has a headstone and make sure the area was nice because we saw all of the research about how volunteers were coming out cleaning the area. And so we wanted to do our part.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
I flew here from Florida. We came out to see if we can find it.
Okay, all right. I'm able to go into our database and see where the surrounding headstones are. I'm able to figure out where that person may be, whether they have a headstone or not, but I'm able to figure out their location. It's not an exact science, but I can get pretty darn close. This is where he is.
Wow.
So you'll be able to bring your family and come to him directly. That is a good feeling for me.
Me too.
Thank you. So we can sort out people by their first name, their last name, their age. We can sort them out by the day that they were buried, by the undertaker who buried them. So it gives us an awful lot of information, and then when we go back and start putting that information together, that's when the stories about Greenwood start to emerge.
So based on the locations of everyone, I was able to figure out that your grandmother's right there. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I have not been here. I think I was 13 when she passed, and wow.
I get so much out of it. I know what it does for them. You can just see the expression on their faces, and you step back and you give them a moment because of where they are, and it's really wonderful.
We're so sorry for letting us share this moment.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
So when you have someone like musician Grant Green, as you can see, there's a lot about Grant Green his style of music, who he played with. I know that he died in 1979. That's another filter that I can put in. And what I find is that he's in section 2, row 47, grave 53. However, he doesn't have a headstone. What we did a few years ago, the Killer Blues Project, they wanted to provide a headstone for him to honor him because he was such a great musician. And with that, we set a headstone in our memorial area, which is right up front. Hopefully one day, there'll be a headstone in his actual resting place.
If you are looking for information on what Black St. Louis was like post-Civil War into current times, actually, and certainly up to the mid-90s when the cemetery was still buried, then any aspect of African American culture that you would like to discuss, I can tell you about someone who's buried here in Greenwood. We've got a snapshot of St. Louis from 1878 to 1993 with names, with addresses, with ages. So when we talk about the African American community, it's not just on the surface, it's going down to who lived on what street and who they might have been married to, what hospital they died in, what their community was like, and things like that.
I think there are really two individuals that, if we're talking about St. Louis, American civil rights history, we can focus on Harriet Robinson Scott and Charlton Tandy. Harriet Scott, of course, was the wife of Dred Scott. In many ways, Dred and Harriet Scott were like a 19th century David fighting an American Goliath, slavery. She and Dred filed their initial petitions on April 6, 1846, and it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and eventually obtained their freedom. They didn't win their freedom, they obtained their freedom. But in that 9-year period, they experienced some really horrible things. Their owners probably were not treating them kind, especially because of their legal attempt to try to gain their freedom. And the fact that Dred Scott dies the year after, and Harriet has to keep moving on with their 2 children, not only through the Civil War, but all the way through Reconstruction. It's just an amazing story to their place in civil rights history. Charlton Tandy is a different story. Originally born in Kentucky, moves to St. Louis. He is active during the Civil War. After that, he is going to be a major figure in the fight to gain voting rights. He will, many years before Rosa Parks, he will be arrested for sitting in the white section in a segregated streetcar. He will continually play a part in civil rights advocacy, really to the day he died. But both of these figures are representative of not only popular figures in civil rights history, but those people who do not get the credit that they have due.
This is going to be a beautiful, stately tree, and it's really important that it's showcased. And I think that here in front will be the best spot for it.
It's an amazing story, and it's an amazing transformation. And by the time I personally physically came to Greenwood for the first time, much of it was open area like it is now. There had been a lot of restoration of the actual markers and really a major pushback of the invasive plants around the perimeter. And so I came out, and Shelley and Raphael were both working here, and there were some other volunteers, and it just was heart-touching connection to be here and to actually work with them. And then I got the idea to do a planting here of native trees and bushes.
That's so sweet.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yes. The native trees that we planted out here with Gene Ponzi and the Botanical Garden, it was really just a project to beautify this Greenwood Cemetery. Everything about it, the learning concept, I just love to learn. The learning experience and just grasping the knowledge and giving it to people who don't understand the importance of a tree, the importance of native prairie, the importance of a native plant. Just giving that knowledge and giving that extensive learning experience from me to another person, it just fulfills me.
Rhus radicans is the scientific name of poison ivy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The work that Shelley and Raphael Morris have done to reclaim this space from neglect and being overrun by plants and overrun by illegal dumping is so moving and so inspiring. And to be a little bit of a contributor to that really means a lot to me. And it super means a lot to me to have planted the first living amenity here at Greenwood in the way that we did it.
Who would have ever thunk it, right? You know, 8 years ago that when I first walked into this jungle, you know, that, 8 years later I'm going to be sitting here doing an interview in front of my great-grandmother. And that is such an incredible feeling for me, and just a blessing. And I know she's listening in, and I hope she's proud of what I've been able to accomplish.